I think people are certainly the economic anxiety that people have is palpable. Gas costs more than $4 in Michigan right now. Again, whether it's in whatever items you need to buy at the grocery store, they're more expensive than they were 7 months ago. They're more expensive than they were a while ago. Like that's a thing that is going to be a defining characteristic and on the front of people's minds because they probably got to go to the store after they vote. So that's never far from people's minds. This also is going to boil down to, the candidates who win their races this August are the candidates who are best able to translate that energy to people turning out to vote and what communities are ready to be engaged.
Welcome to An Honorable Profession, a podcast focused on incredibly talented people who've dedicated themselves to public service when their country and communities needed it the most. I'm Ryan Coonerty. Along with Debbie Cox Bultan of The New Deal, I'm lucky enough to be your co-host. The New Deal is an organization that supports the next generation of American leaders. Check out newdealleaders.org to find out more.
My guest today is Michigan Lieutenant Governor Garlin Gilchrist, who's also currently running for Secretary of State. In advance of the upcoming primary there August 4th, he and I talked about the questions he's most getting on the campaign trail, how he's addressing concerns about AI and talking about democracy, and what factors he thinks will ultimately determine the competitive U.S. Senate race there. He also shares why Michigan has lots of lessons to teach national Democrats, including what people want from their leaders right now, and why showing up is key to building credibility. I hope you enjoy. All right, Lieutenant Governor Garlin Gilchrist, thanks for being with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's good to see you.
It's been a while. It has been. It's so nice to see you. Congrats on the nomination.
I'm so excited to be our Democratic candidate for Secretary of State in Michigan. It's a state that I'm biased, but I know is the most decisive one in the country. And so what happens here matters, what our voters do matters, and our voting rights matter here in this state.
Yeah, well, let's talk. I was going to say I think you are like ground zero in 26. Every eye's on Michigan right now for your Senate race. You've got a governor's race, statewide offices, and just so much happening. I'm just kind of curious as you are heading around the state talking to people, what questions are you getting the most? What's most on people's minds right now?
Certainly prices and costs are front of mind, especially for just the things that we have to deal with every day, groceries, healthcare, childcare. Michigan was hit particularly hard by these Medicaid cuts that the Trump administration has really, stomped all of us down with across the country. And it's a real problem, especially in rural Michigan. We've had hospitals that have had to cut back and some that have closed in part as a result of that. People are really hurting. And, honestly, there was a woman in northern Michigan who I had a conversation with who made the connection very clearly to voting rights in the Secretary of State's office in particular in Michigan when she said that, look, if Donald Trump is able to wreck voting the way that he raised prices, then we're all screwed. And so this voting system is what we use to fix the systems that fail us. We have to vote for people who are going to, hold corporations accountable and get corporate money out of politics. We have to vote for people who are going to vote down prices. We have to vote for people who are going to support more childcare and healthcare for more people in more places. And when we can't do that, we lose that tool to fix systems that fail us. And so that really resonated with me and really is the reason why I'm running for Secretary of State of Michigan. Because this office opens the door with all that change.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to ask you that because, you are lieutenant governor now. You've done so much for your state on everything from early child care to diversifying your economy. I mean, so many different things. And now you are, as Secretary of State, kind of making this honing in on kind of the voting rights. Of course, we just had Donald Trump recently do that crazy speech where he's talking about trying to roll back our rights. And so, and I do wonder sometimes how much people are paying attention to the democracy side of things. That's wonderful that woman made that connection. Do you feel like do you feel like democracy is on people's minds, or how do you talk about it to make sure people understand why it's so important to all these other things, like you were just saying?
Well, I want to make the connections, and I try to make them very explicitly. But here's the truth. Trump talks about it all the time. He talks about voter suppression, what feels like on a daily basis, whether it's online or in interviews. He talks about it all the time. Like, it's important to him because our power is dangerous. Our power, we have the ability to vote out people who cut Medicaid. We have the ability to vote out people who are making childcare less affordable than it already isn't. And so I think that the stakes are being made clear every single day. And we are seeing people tune in because they're thinking like, I have to be able to do something about this. And so if voting is one thing I can do about it, then I'm ready to do that. And so I am just, that's how I've been able to make the connection clear. And I think that's starting to resonate with people. And it's not just the people who are already or who have been previously super politically engaged. I mean, people realize that we got to do something. And voting is something you can do and that you should do. And I want to make sure that's available to every eligible Michigander and that we have systems in place so that it's easy and convenient.
Do you think people who are not running for Secretary of State should be talking about democracy as an issue in their campaign, in whatever level they're running for?
I think they should connect it to the issues that are most important to their voters. And so, again, I'm not asking everybody to run on election administration or election transparency.
That's your job.
But they should. But they should make the connection that people have to vote for them in order for them to make the changes that they propose and that they're campaigning on. So the vote is the doorway to change. The vote is the key that unlocks those opportunities. And so I think everyone should have something to say because we all have a role to play in our democracy. So it's just like we all have a role to play in changing our communities for the better.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. I mean, another thing I wanted to ask you about is this. I was looking at your statement that you put out after that speech, and you talked about fighting for Michiganders and fighting for the right to vote and protecting people's right to vote. I do hear the word fighter a lot these days. I'm wondering, if you hear that when you're running around the country, or around the state, talking to people about people wanting you to fight for them, and what do you think that means to people? Like, what are they asking for?
So I definitely, that is energy that people want to see from people who are public officials and candidates for people who want to be public officials. Because what I see as people who for a generation have felt like the system hasn't worked for them. It's designed for somebody else's wealth. It's designed for somebody else's happiness or convenience. It's designed for somebody else's health. And they're doing all the things they're supposed to do, right? I'm working, I'm trying to do my best, I'm taking care of my kids, and I'm still struggling while I see these people making more money than God, and I'm not getting any slice of this share. I'm running in place. And so people want somebody to beat back that system because that system has beat them up. And so that is where I think the fighter posture comes from. It's that, like, if I have been trying to fight in my personal life and I've lost, I need somebody to fight with me so we can win. And so that's how it shows up. And again, it can show up across a number of different issues. In Michigan, we need to vote to protect our water and our environment, for example, because we have more fresh water. 21% of the globe's fresh water touches the state of Michigan. And so we have a unique responsibility to be stewards of those resources and vote to protect them. Well, if our voting rights are snatched from us, we can't do that. We can't fulfill our responsibility that I think God gave us as Michiganders. So we have an opportunity, I think, to assert ourselves in this way. And part of being assertive is fighting what's wrong and fighting for what's right. Yeah.
How do you square? I didn't know that about the 21%, by the way, of the water. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
How do you square? We hear a lot right now in the election season about outsiders, right? You've been lieutenant governor. I happen to believe very strongly that, running on a record and fighting for people are not, in an anathema. They actually combine to make a pretty good case to the American people, I think, that essentially, that I can deliver for you. But how do you think about that question? How do you square this kind of, what we're feeling is this real, outsider year, or people who don't want people, want to throw people out of office? And maybe, or do you see that as more of a Washington versus, not Washington issue?
I mean, I'm always going to take a chance to throw stones at Washington from Michigan. So I didn't say that. But I think this is about how you establish credibility. And I think what people get frustrated with, or what people lose patience with, is people maybe who have been serving for a long time, but don't feel like they are connected to or responsive to the community they serve in a way that they may have been when they first took office. So just because you've been serving a long time that should not mean that you get less and less connected to the community, but too often it does. And that's what
Hmm.
opens the door, therefore, for someone to establish credibility by saying, I'm not them, I'm you, I'm more connected to you. I understand your issues better than they do because they're off doing whatever those inside people do. I understand why that resonates. But you can, as a person who's currently serving, the way that you protect yourself against that is by being completely grounded and present in your community. You have to do the work in that way. What people want is people who can go into whatever role they are pursuing and make something work better for them as a resident, better for them as a voter. And so there are many ways to establish that credibility. Like I've been lieutenant governor for 7.5 years, but people also know that I am fundamentally different than every other statewide elected official in America. Why? I'm an engineer. I'm a software developer specifically. There are no other software developers serving in statewide elected office anywhere in this country but me. So when we're having a conversation about protecting personal, private, and sensitive data from a Trump administration that's suing 20 plus states to get it, we're talking about protecting our data or our communities from big tech companies' incursions in all the ways they try to do it, by taking advantage of local governments, by doing shady contracts with elected officials, by imposing data centers on people's communities. Like, they can't pull one over on me because I understand the language. I know what the plan is. I was in the industry and left it. I've started and sold 2 technology companies myself. Because I know what I know, I can make sure that Michiganders are well spoken for and protected against those who want to take advantage of them and do them harm. That establishes credibility for me that is different than anyone else may be able to establish credibility. So I think it's important that we as leaders make sure that our credibility comes through in a way that voters respect and are looking for from their public servants.
Yeah. Let's stay on data centers and AI generally. I mean, this is obviously causing people a lot of. I'm married to a computer scientist myself, so I feel like I'm by marriage in this conversation.
Right.
But there's people are. Well, I guess. Oh, actually, I won't presume. I'm going to ask this question: how much does it come up on the campaign trail? Are people
Every day.
talking about AI every day?
Data
And what are
centers
they
come up.
saying? What are they
Data
worried?
centers come up every day.
Every
Every
day.
day in every community, even if there's not
Okay.
a potential or pending data center in people's communities specifically,
Yeah.
they're still talking about it and they're concerned about it. Look, in a moment when so many people have real anxiety about the future, so much of that anxiety is tied up in anxiety about technology, what it means,
Yeah.
what it's going to do, what its impact could be, has been, or will be. And so this is very front of mind for people of all different ages, people working in all different parts of our economy, people just at different points of the political spectrum. It's very, very present. And so, I think about this, and on data centers specifically, I get especially concerned whenever I see instances of corporations bullying communities. Like, what is our job
Mm.
as public servants if not to stop corporate entities from bullying our communities? And in too many of these data center projects, that's what we see. We see these big, huge companies that are worth so much money, right? Like the biggest, most valuable companies in the world come into these small townships and communities and basically forcing an economic development project down their throats. But that's not okay. If you want to do something in my community, you need to do it with me, not to me. And too often we've seen that bullying happen, and that's part of why people are fighting back. They don't like that.
Yeah, yeah. And how do you think about? I mean, I think of you as a very thoughtful, results oriented guy. That's what we've seen as you as lieutenant governor. You've delivered a lot. You've got, and so I feel like this is one of those moments in politics where like everybody, it feels it has to be so binary, and these are really complicated questions, as you know, particularly on AI or whatever issue we're talking about. How do you thread that needle between like fighting for people, making sure that you're going to stand up for them, but also saying, hey, like it's not, these are complicated questions, and how are we going to? There's some nuance involved here, right? And so, how do you to get to problem solving? We got to get in the nuance. How do you thread that needle?
Well, it starts with me with people having to um, know, first of all, that I care about them and their priorities and their values. And we have to recognize that different people at a table have different priorities. And so it's important that as a
Yeah.
public servant that people know whose side of the table I'm on. So I think that's where it starts. And then to say that there may be a pathway in this situation to make something work. And I'm willing to find it because, as you said, I am a problem solver and a solution builder. Like my job, like what I learned how to do as an engineer is make systems work for people. So my job is to find the version of this that does work for people or does work for this community. And in the event that that does not exist, then I'm not going to like make them do something that won't work for the community. But I also am willing to be open-minded to say that, yeah, you know what? A community can have standards. And those standards can be super high. And, I think, again, for a lot of reasons in Michigan, we should have super high standards. Again, 21% of the fresh water in the world. We're the biggest state geographically east of the Mississippi River. Like we have certain considerations that are different than other places. And those should be taken seriously, not just by the people who live in and work in our communities, but they should be taken seriously by anyone who would want to invest in or do business with or be present in our communities. And too often, I don't see the latter part of that equation happening.
Yeah. I mean, you're making me think about the fact that I think it's really interesting. It's a little bit of a pivot, but you guys have a super interesting system in Michigan, right? So you've got the primaries, but you also have for down ballot under the level of governor, you go through the convention process to become the nominee, not on the ballot. Will you explain it to us?
Yeah, absolutely. We are one of the few states that does use a party convention process to essentially endorse some candidates for some offices. So in Michigan, as a Secretary of State candidate, I won my party convention process, as did our Attorney General candidate, as did the candidates for our State Board of Education, and the candidates for our three biggest public universities in Michigan, the governing boards of University of Michigan, Michigan State University, and Wayne State Universities. Those governing board seats are actually statewide elected positions. And so those positions are all selected and endorsed at a party convention. The office of governor, all of our federal offices, all of our state legislative offices, all of our, municipal county offices, those go through a primary process. And our primary in Michigan is coming up on August 4th.
Yeah. So essentially your primary's over and has been since the convention.
Yeah.
For your race.
So I became our Democratic candidate on April 19th by being successful at our state party convention. And I'm incredibly grateful that we built the widest and broadest coalition of any candidate who was competing for any office that day. I'm incredibly proud of that. And then so I will be formally now nominated to be our nominee at a party convention that will happen later in August after the primary.
I see. Okay. So it's kind of interesting though, because I mean, I'm curious whether there's, so your primary is coming up August 4th. You talked about we're not too far from when we're speaking, and so that's what everybody's talking about, right? Obviously, you've got this big marquee Senate race in particular on the Democratic side. I'm curious about two things. So I'll start with this one first. What do you think the primary is going to come down to, particularly like in your Senate race? What are the issues that primary voters are most focused on? Yeah. I won't make you predict what's going to happen.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll describe it on sort of two axes. I think the first one that it boils down to is, again, we are in a context and a moment where so many people are crying out for action, whether that is action that pushes back against a Trump administration that has been frankly dangerous and deadly, whether that's action that pushes forward a positive agenda for people and communities and just our values and asserts them in this really fraught moment. That's one set of things. So like, I think that posture, we went back to like kind of fighter posture or whatever, how that manifests itself. I do think that is something that people want to understand. Are you going to go to Washington or Lansing and be someone who's going to fight for my priorities, whether that's against Republicans or that's even within our Democratic coalition? The other, I think people are certainly the economic anxiety that people have is palpable. Gas costs more than $4 in Michigan right now. Again, whether it's whatever items you need to buy at the grocery store, they're more expensive than they were 7 months ago. They're more expensive than they were a while ago. Like that's a thing that is going to be a defining characteristic and on the front of people's minds, because they probably got to go to the store after they vote. So that's never far from people's minds. And then I think this also is going to boil down to, The candidates who win their races this August are the candidates who are best able to translate that energy to people turning out to vote. And what communities are ready to be engaged. Is this going to be a year where we see young people turn out like they never did before? Our state party convention, for example, was the biggest state party convention in the history of the state of Michigan. It was also the youngest state party convention in the history of the state of Michigan. So if that's any indication of the kinds of people who will participate in a Democratic primary, for example, that says that we could have more people voting and more of them could be younger. That has implications for what you need to do to be able to capture the imagination and support of those kinds of voters. So I think that's the things that the candidates who are going to compete to serve the state of Michigan, I think that's what they're thinking about going to this primary.
Yeah. I mean, but then, like we know, as you know, you win the primary and you have to now turn to the general. And so that was kind of what I was thinking about. It's interesting that you kind of can be already thinking about the general to some extent, before even the other primary races are going on. What do you think? How do you think about that differently? I mean, you in particular had to go through not just a Democratic primary process where, a lot of Democratic primary voters are more moderate. State parties tend to be a little bit more, I think, can be a little bit farther left leaning. How do you square kind of the people you had to talk to get the nomination in the primary and now how you're going to speak to everybody in Michigan that gets to vote for you in November?
So look, I've been speaking to people all across Michigan for 7.5 years. As Lieutenant Governor of Michigan, I've visited all 83 counties of our state at least 3 times. There's no one in the state of Michigan who's put on more work on the road in more places in Michigan than I have in decades, honestly. I go and talk to people exactly where they are in Michigan and hear and understand what's important to them, what they want to see going forward, and how I can help them. That's the credibility that I lean on coming into a general election, that there is not a place in Michigan I can go and say that I have not created value there. And so now my job is to help people realize their full potential and open the door to their experience to the state of Michigan more broadly. I mean, the Secretary of State's office is that front door to experiencing all of Michigan. It's where you get your ID to be able to go places you couldn't go without identification. It's where you get your driver's license to be able to drive and explore all the beauty of our state. It's where you go to get your pass to go to every state park for the whole year. And it's where you go to get your voice to have a say in how our communities move forward as a voter. So I want to open that door wide to everyone in Michigan. And I can tell people that I'm the most effective person to do that. And they can support me for that, even if they are not ideologically Democratic, because that is about respecting their voice. It's about a Secretary of State's office that respects their time, delivers them excellent and convenient services, whether that's in person, digitally, remotely. Make sure that I set the table for them to be able to have a fantastic experience. Like that's my job. And so what I lean on is the fact that I want everyone to participate. I think that's the biggest difference between me as a Democrat and the Republican or MAGA crowd. Like they literally are fighting every day to make it harder for some people to vote. They're a smaller electorate they feel like is better for them, especially in a year when Donald Trump is not on the ballot. And so that's why they're proposing things that can make it hard for women to vote, especially women who are married and may have changed their names. They make it more difficult for rural voters to vote. They make it less convenient to be able to register to vote or to drop off a ballot that you received in the mail. To screw with the United States Postal Service, to have people question whether they could get ballots in the first place because they tried to set a rule to stop states from sending people ballots. That is literally voter suppression. So that is what I fight against in terms of this, because I respect the people of Michigan enough to want them to have a say in how Michigan and how America moves forward. And so it's my job to make sure that everyone can have that say. And that's what I'm going to fight for. And I think people will see that that's what I care about most.
I mean, are you worried about the elections this November? I mean, we have a fantastic Michigan Secretary of State who actually also happens to be a New Deal leader she's running for governor. But so I know she's fighting, this currently and you're running on these issues. But what are you watching out for, let's say, as we head into November in terms of anything you'd be worried about having a free and fair election?
I mean, look, the Trump and his allies, they are at least 3 things. They are committed, they are creative, and they are aggressive. So I don't think they're going to stop until they can find a way to suppress people. I think they'll have their lawyers do the wildest things they can think of to try to figure out a way to stop people. I believe that means that we have to be at least as committed, at least as creative, and at least as aggressive when it comes to helping people, making the system work, removing barriers, and stopping these bad actors. And so we have been doing really, really broad and aggressive preparation for all the potential darts that could be thrown at us in Michigan, ranging from, novel legal challenges to federal agents kind of just being in the vicinity of voting places and everything in between. And we're exploring every tool that we have to make sure that people know that they can vote safely, securely in Michigan, that it will be counted accurately and securely, and that our results are ones that you can take to the bank.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's going to be incumbent on all of us too, right? Not just leaders like you're talking about, but Americans, to actually know that we've got to stand up no matter what is thrown at us and exercise the one right we have, which is can't be taken away from us if we want to have a government that works, the democracy that works. So I think that's a really great point. I want to just think for a second about kind of what if there are lessons that are happening in Michigan right now that national Democrats should heed. What do you think people should know about the voters of Michigan that they should be thinking about, whether they're running in 26 or they're thinking about running in 28?
I think Michigan, I'm biased, okay? So just let me preface it with that. But
fair enough.
I think Michigan is a state that is really reflective of this country as a whole. There's a reason why Michigan has been consistently decisive in presidential elections. Issues that matter to Michiganders matter across the board, across the country. And so we're a state that has, all sides of the spectrum. We have a deep and rich history of manufacturing, of working class in the service sector, and all different industries represented in Michigan. And we have, elite public universities that are some of the best, including, my university, University of Michigan, the best university in the history of the world, that are excellent, higher education institutions, all represented. So what can work in Michigan can work anywhere. And I think, and it sounds basic, Deb, I'll admit that, but I think Michiganders respect who comes to see them. And I think that it is very difficult to lead people who you're scared to talk to. And I think electeds at their peril believe that they can learn, they can only learn online, and they can only win online, that they can only learn, or they can only win through the airwaves. I think you need to go see people. That's why I spend so much time on the road. Because you get a different feel for what is true. Like the truth feels different when it is experienced than it does when it's heard. And so letting people know how you can have folks that, from a DC perspective, they want to put people in certain boxes. You're an environmental voter. You vote on gun rights. You vote on this. When you actually meet an actual person, somebody who loves to fish and hunt does care a lot about their water. That's an opportunity for a Democrat to talk to them about what conservation and respect for the sanctity and purity of our natural resources is, and I can get that person to vote against a pipeline. So I think we have to. But you have to actually go and see that and feel those layers and feel that texture in order to make things happen. But I know one thing about Michiganders in this state that was the birthplace for the modern labor movement. I'm speaking to you from a UAW hall right now. The UAW sit-down strike happened that really birthed the modern trade unionist labor movement here in this country. We know what it means to take collective action, and we want people who respect collective action, who respect the right to organize, because the power of many individuals grouping together can overtake and overcome and defeat any power, any corporate power, any unjust power. And that's something that's in our bones here in the state of Michigan. And so I think folks should recognize that and try to build campaigns and operations that are responsive to that and that can channel that kind of energy.
Yeah. I mean, it goes both ways, doesn't it? You're talking very thoughtfully about how you get to know people, and they're more complicated and nuanced than we try to make them out, some campaign consultants who are going to segment them out, but also they see you. And so to be able to be told or caricature a elected official or a candidate because, you have a D or an R or whatever next to your name. And then I assume I know all about you. You're actually, by showing up, not just learning about them, but they're saying, hey, that person doesn't talk like you told me that he was going to talk or whatever, right?
I
It's
could
both
give
ways.
you a very concrete example of that.
Please.
And look, so look, you can't see because I'm sitting down. I'm 6 feet 8 inches tall. I'm a six
Yes, you
eight
are. I know
dark
that. I can
skinned,
attest to that.
black guy from Detroit, right? Um, well, this was like, about a year into the COVID-19 pandemic. Really, really challenging time for so many people in this country. I was in a community in northern Michigan, and I was walking through their kind of main street area, and the township supervisor of this township was telling me about this restaurant that had been started by these guys who were from the community. They had left, after they graduated high school, but they had come back some years later. And a bunch of them got together and they invested money in starting this restaurant. And the restaurant opened in February of 2020, like the worst time to open a restaurant, probably in American history, right? And so they were struggling. We had these, this guidance, public health guidance, as people couldn't gather in person in large numbers. It was tough for this restaurant. And the person who owned that restaurant was pissed off about it and like ranting on the internet about like, yeah, this blah, 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 trash talking our administration and all this stuff. Well, I asked the supervisor if I could talk to the guy. And he was a little nervous because he was like, whoa, he was really, I'm telling you, he was cussing at you on the internet. Like, I don't think that's the best idea. And I said, nah, let's see if we can get them together. And as fate would have it, as Providence would make way for, the one of the restaurateurs, like 3 or 4 partners, and like some of the chefs were able to like come get together with me at this restaurant like 45 minutes later. Okay, and I sat with them and I just said, tell me about this place. Tell me about you. Tell me about why you started this. And they gave me the whole story. Right, the guys that played football together in high school. Also, they gave me the whole story, and I was like, look. I'm a 2-time recovering entrepreneur. I get it. This sucks. And I will tell you that, like, me and Governor Whitmer didn't wake up every day to think about whose restaurant we could close down. That ain't how we thought about this. So just like, it's not where this is coming from. And we talked about some things that would have been helpful to them. And I talked about some programs that we had that may or may not work for them. I didn't make him a guarantee that something would work, but I did say that I would have somebody on our team get back to him about what these programs are. And at the end of the conversation, he said to me something I won't forget. He said, I wanted to hate you. I was ready to come in here and just give you a piece of my mind and just tell you off and tell you how stupid y'all are, blah, blah. But like, I realized that you were actually listening to me. You were actually interested in what I was saying. You were actually wanting to be helpful.
Yeah.
And my takeaway from that was this. I have no idea if that guy voted for me in 2022. I don't know. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But what I do know, or what I am very, very confident in, is that if he was at a barbecue and somebody, for some reason, started trash talking me, he would tell them, "Oh, slow down now. I know he's a Democrat. I know he's believes in all this stuff, but I talked to that guy. I met that guy. I spent time with the guy. He listened to me. Like I don't think he's crazy." And in that situation, I think that's a win. And that's a real win for building community. That's a real win for recognizing that we all are in this present and in this future together. And so we might as well figure out how to do something together to make it better.
I love that so much. I've got goosebumps. I mean, it's it, right? I mean, it's that human connection. It's what democracies are built on. That's what this country's built on.
Right.
I mean, it's just, we have to get back to that sense of, whether you, like, to your point, we can even disagree. You don't have to believe everything I believe, but we certainly should be able to talk about it. And you should know that I'm not the enemy just because whatever. I think that's so powerful. Let me end with a question that we've been asking people, because, as you know, we're putting together kind of a messaging series based on some of the New Deal leaders around the country and what they're seeing and talking about where they live. So you can boil down what you just told me in if you'd like, but if Democrats are going to win, they need to blank.
Okay, that's a good question. If Democrats are going to win, they need to blank. I like that. If Democrats are going to win, they need to make sure that people understand that we understand that what is the things that have happened to get us to this point have not been successful, or at least have not been successful enough, because too many of our people are struggling. Too many of our people are not able to realize their full potential through no fault of their own, because they're systematically held back or held down. We need to make sure people understand that we understand that, and that we urgently want to do something about that we are willing to fix what's broken, we're willing to replace what has failed, and we're willing to build what does not exist. And if people understand that, they will support Democrats going forward.
I think that's right. Even if it means pissing off some people, which we're not always great at as a party, to be honest.
You know who's
we got
pissed
to do
off?
it.
The voters are pissed off.
That's right. That's right. We got to do it. We got to do it for them. That's why else are we doing this work, right?
Exactly.
Why else are we doing this work?
Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Well, thank you. So good to see you. Really appreciate your time today. So fun to talk to you. We'll be following you on the trail. Congrats again on the nomination. Super important job, Secretary of State. So thank you for stepping up and doing that.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me. I want everybody to go to garlingilchrist.com to check us out.
Sounds great. Good to see you.
Thank you.
An Honorable Profession is a New Deal Leaders podcast. And because we keep things honorable, no tax dollars were used in the making of this podcast.
This podcast is part of the Democracy Group.